Hi everyone, this is Ham, one of the TAs for the Devertree Code Forward program. It's like, okay, well this clock is actually an hour behind. It's 9, so it's like way past my bedtime. So we're gonna try and keep this one quick. What we're gonna do is open up some code in Visual Studio Code. We're going to install some extensions, and then we are also going to do a little bit of Python debugging. I'm hoping this video won't be longer than like 7 minutes. But there's a chance it might be because I'm kind of getting a little loopy. So here we go. So if you followed the previous videos, we should have a homework assignment here that we got by doing something like git clone and https colon blah 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 blah. Right? So we should have this directory here, and if we installed code appropriately in the previous videos, we should be able to do. Well, we look. If we look at our present working directory, we can see that we're in here. We can list our files and we can see what files we have. Both of these commands will work in both a Unix terminal, which would be Mac OS X, or in Ubuntu, for example, and also works in Windows. You can do those commands and make sure that we're in the correct place. Then we can do code dot, and that dot represents current directory. Code open up this current directory. So we can see that we have the files that we listed here in this. Cool. So just some ways around to get to like special commands. You can do Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P on Mac. Bring up this area where you can get kind of some special commands. To change your themes, you can do Command-K, Command-T. So, yeah, Command-K, Command-T, or Control-K, Control-T. Then bring this up if you want to, you know, impress your friends with weird color IDE stuff. So, okay. So we're just gonna run with the default one for now, though. So we can open up this file. You can just click on it once, and we see have our code here. It has a .py extension, so it's a Python file. But down here, Visual Studio Code knows that it's a Python file and says the Python extension is recommended for this type. Just go ahead and click install for that. So you can see it opened up this tab, which is extensions. You can search for other extensions in here that you would like, and it finished installing. Cool, it's here. Now it says you can change the Python interpreter using all this stuff. Okay, cool, thank you. Now, linter Pilant is not installed. I don't want to get into what linting is right now, but it essentially helps us write cleaner code. So I'm just going to go ahead and click install. It's going to open up our terminal, run these little commands right here. It's going to run Python, and it's going to run something called pip. It's going to install a package called Pilant. So this might take just a moment to kind of finish out. But this is something that adds one of those niceties to using an IDE over like a web browser a code runner. Okay, I'm not 100% sure if it's finished yet, but okay, there it goes. It's finished now that we're back at the command. So we should now have Pilant. Let's go ahead and run some of the code. Oh, also, really cool command. Control-T. Nope, not. Well, if you have the extension I have, it's Control-T. Anyways, there's a shortcut to open up, you know, a little menu similar to this, and you just type a file name, and then it'll open up the file name. But for now, you can just use this little navigation pane that you get to by clicking here, or you can click again to dismiss it. You can kind of fiddle around in here and find out quite a lot of really nice features. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this analyze text file. I'm going to open up this README, which has the instructions for the homework. It's actually kind of gross. So what I did here to get this over on this side from a README file to make it something, you know, a little bit more readable is type Control-K and then V. Then it opens up a more formatted style. But for the sake of making it more readable, we'll just go to the GitHub page and read the README for the assignment there. Write a function, analyze text that receives a string as input. Your function should count the number of alphabet characters. Function should return analysis in the form of a string like. You will need to make use of an is-else function. So it wants us to return something like this. So I am just going to for the sake of not giving away any answers, go ahead and return this this actual string. Okay. And okay, so I'm actually returning that very string right now. Cool. So how do we actually run this code? Well, we need to call the function, otherwise nothing's going to happen. Text. Okay. So generally as a fair rule, a Visual Studio asks you like, do you want to install something? Let's go ahead and say yes. General rule until you are really confident about so then let's go ahead and ignore what got me into a Python application I didn't. So let's say we want to run this actual code. We can go here. Actually, let's put a breakpoint here to the left of the code line number for this little red dot. Go to debug, start debugging. The shortcut on Mac, I think, is function F5. Just on Windows, I think it's just F5. But for now, I'll just go in here. Debug configuration. I think for now, we're just going to be fine doing Python file as far as I know for the beginning parts of the course. Okay, so what it's doing here is a whole bunch of crazy mumbo jumbo to say, essentially, Python run this file. But what's really nice is you can see it didn't actually run everything. It paused right here. Okay, so essentially that allows us to step through our code, as maybe some of us saw in the class. And we step through and it finishes. Okay, but do we know if that worked? So let's actually print the results of this function call. I'm going to press F5 to run it. You can set a default file here so you don't have to select this every time, but for now we're just okay. Text. Okay, we can see over here that the input parameter that we have with variable name text, and if you hover, you can see what the value is. We can also look over here when we start debugging and have this debug context, what the values actually are. Let's go ahead and step over, and we get this little output right here that is this text. Text contains 240 alphabetic characters, of which 105, 43.75% are E right there. So that we returned it. This function resolved to this return value, and then we printed it. Let's do just a sort of simple looping example, so that way we can know, get a little bit more familiar with kind of debugging and stepping through stuff, especially with iterations. Skip up or mess up a little bit. So let's do for I in range len text. So we're going to iterate over every single character in the hopefully I didn't move my mic there. Iterate over every single character in the text here. So let's go ahead and just for example, as we do that, we'll just do print text I. So we're going to print text at this position, and for now I'm just going to return an empty string. See it. So I'm going to put this debugger right here. I'm going to go ahead and press F5, Python file debug runner. Okay, text. This is some text, so that's what we put into it. We can see that this is some text, and then what I'm going to do is do this step over. Okay, so as soon as we stepped into that loop, we now know that I is 0. So we're on the very first iteration of this. And we know that we can treat strings like a list. So if this was a list and each one of these values was an index, which one of these characters is going to print if I run this next command and say text, this is some text, at position 0, print that. Well, it's going to be the T. We can see down here that what that did happen. It jumps back up to the for loop, and Python knows to then increment the I. Once we step in, okay, so now I is 1, so now it's going to print the next value. And we can just kind of keep stepping through and we see that it is printing down here at the bottom in this terminal. By the way, this is a terminal that's built into Visual Studio Code. It's reasonable to say that it's pretty much the same as this. So you can see that we're stepping through this, and it gives us way better insight, sort of like a code lens into what it is that we're actually doing in our work here. I think I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here. The purpose was to really get us to have Visual Studio Code installed, and then to debug. Actually, I'm going to do one more thing. Get Visual Studio Code installed, get the extensions installed, and then step through some of the code. Okay, cool. So I'm going to get rid of this. Now, if you maybe have noticed that every single one of these repositories has a test.py file. And this is how your homework is essentially graded. Given if your analyze text function is given E as the input, right here is the text, we expect that this would be the output. That's what we're testing. And you can run this test code on your own to see, okay, is my code working? Is it passing the tests before submitting it to GitHub, if you choose, so that you can know whether or not your code is correct. So the way that we do that is, I think it's Python 3, not just Python on my machine, is do Python, and I believe we do -m pytest, then do test.py. I'm going to see if I'm right or not. Okay, so maybe it's Python without E on my machine. Okay, so this one's correct. So we're essentially saying Python, run a module, or a package code, I guess we could call it, called pytest. And with pytest, we want to run the file test.py. This is how we get our test ran. But then it comes in here and says, we don't have a module called pytest. And this has been a minute since I've done package management installation with Python, so I hope I do this correctly. So what we can do is come in here and just type pip install pytest. I really hope this is right. It's gonna be I don't want to lead everyone astray here on the first run. Okay, so I hope it installed. So if I press the arrow key up twice, I get that previous command that I attempted to run, and I can now run it. Okay, and it ran. So instead of having to submit my code online and wait 5 minutes, wait 10 minutes to see what the results are, I can now make changes to my code, run this command, and get the results immediately. And this, we're making it so that you can actually understand what the error is. So for the input of EE, so if this gets EE, we want the expected output to be this phrase. But we got an empty string because right now we're just returning an empty string. So now we have some test cases to work against to help us hone our code or make it more correct. Okay, so I think I'm going to end the video there. We'll do another video probably later about a little bit more in-depth debugging with breakpoints and such in Python. I hope, oh man, I definitely blew the 7-minute goal on this, but that's okay because you were so enthralled and entertained by all of this. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it'll help you feel more confident as you're doing your homework assignments, and that it will, help you understand the code a lot better. So because you're able to step through some of the code and you're able to understand why it doesn't work some of the times. Well, I think that that's good. Oh, another last thing. We're not going to get into how to submit your homework from the command line right now. So I would just take this, fork the repository and then edit your code in there by just copying your work from here into there, committing pull request, and continue to do it that way. Okay, 14.5 minutes. We're done. I hope you have a good night if it's night when you're watching this. Goodbye.